Okay, so thanks everybody for joining us. As Simon said, we will be recording this, so you can watch it again if you feel like you missed something. So Simon and I met a couple months ago, and we were talking about sort of the plan for next year and how to make sure we were doing this in a timely fashion so that people would know what courses were coming and to really understand the pathways through the different departments and things like that. So my feeling is always, I don't want surprises like, throughout, like, oh, I didn't know that if I didn't take this class that I couldn't get here. So I always like to do a program like this to just to make sure everybody's on the same page and that we all have the same information. So I appreciate you joining us, and we will not be going 2.5 hours. I think we had blocked the room for that amount of time or something, so that's probably why it's on the calendar that way. But it'll probably be, I don't know, an hour with Q&A, I think. So, and Simon's going to go through sort of the different pieces of the curriculum, and then I'm going to sort of talk about the from that college perspective, like what we're working toward and making sure that you all know sort of the recommended courses for the year. So with that, I'll go to our next slide. This is what we're going to talk about, the courses for next year that are slated, as well as different course recommendations. And then how do we choose our courses and what's the timeline and process? And then we'll have time for Q&A at the end. So first, we'll have Simon just kind of launch into the different departments and talk about the different courses and the sequence and progression. So Simon, if you'll start there.
For sure, Terry. I'm going to be pretty dry here and do some bad presenting in terms of reading directly off the slide. But in general, this is just good information to have in terms of what courses lead to whatever courses. English, I want to start with, because this is the one section where you'll see the asterisk next to the name. That means it's a required course. So we require students to do 4 years of English, both a graduation and a UC eligibility requirement. I'm really going to stop saying that because that's going to be in Terry's part later. But if we look here, ninth grade English, for those ninth grade parents who are here, it is a catch-all class. Everyone in ninth grade is in it. There are some students who are multilingual support should they need that at ninth grade or above. And as we get to advanced, and we get 10, 11, and 12, there is the process to take advanced courses. Terri is going to talk through pretty much the process of doing that. But so as you're looking through, and we're not leaving that later. The question is how do we choose, or how do students sign up for either advanced or regular? It's a combination of grades, recommendations, and shown passion and past interest and past expertise. So, and that's a conversation happens with Terri, advisors, myself, and parents. All right, English, as you can see in the dark red are the core classes. Off to the right are a couple of classes that fit within the English umbrella, but they're elective classes. And if they're elective classes, they're off to the right and that red class, creative writing and speech and debate. Creative writing this year we offered for the first time, as well as speech and debate. Creative writing we offered for 9 through 12 this year. For next year, we're making the choice to make it a 10 through 12 class, just because we want to ensure that the students who are taking it are fully prepared for the rigors of the class. So English, Meg Watson is our department chair, and she would be your first point of contact should you have questions about curriculum. And all the slides, you're going to have pretty much the course progression, and then the department chair and who to contact. Terri, let's go to the next slide. There we are. Okay, so math. So Helena Avery, some of you know her, some of you may have not come across her yet. She is the math department chair. She's our 6th through 8th math teacher. As you can see here, math, we through diagnostic tests, as well as like screening tests when students come in, as well as based on past grades, we will place a kid usually in advanced math 1 or math 1, depending on their experience. Math is a really strange subject in general in terms of the course loads and how they differ from school to school. Our math 1, math 2, they take place. they cover the material that's covered, generally speaking, within Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and Geometry. And then we have pre-calc, which is basically our math 3 course, and then you can kind of see the upper level courses. We do have students who may come in who have had Algebra 1 or Geometry or Algebra 2 as 9th graders or 10th graders, and we have a series of screening tests to see where students are. We also have other students who may take courses independently over summer, and so we kind of work with Helena and Terri to make sure they're placed appropriately in their math courses to give them both the challenge they need as well as the the right placement for the goals that they have. If we look up at the top where it says 12th grade and the numbers down the side, math is where it starts to get a little bit kind of, yes, recommended. These are the courses taken. That's the general path. But as I said before, past experience and then expertise and then a path that the student wants to take, we can find paths where students may be in 11th grade and taking a calculus class or an advanced stats class. And we may also have students who will exhaust our math options by the time they're in 12th grade, and they work with Terri on finding appropriate, either online or elsewhere courses to really continue their learning in this subject. If you have a look at the top classes there is also no asterisks next to the 12th grade courses because our graduation requirements, we require students to go through 11th grade and through Math 3. We recommend, and this will be something that Terri talks about strongly, that students take the math class in 4 years of math. And that is part of the process and conversation a student and family will have with Terri. Also off to the side, we have computer science. So computer science is a course that we're excited to offer next year as an in-person learning class and a class that we are able to have students take. And it really opens up options. And as in terms of looking at everything in the world at the moment, we're excited to offer. Terri, next.
And I'll just jump in here too, just quickly. We know when it comes after that advanced math 3 or math 3 and really planning for that senior year, for those of you that have already met with me for your college counseling meeting, if you have a junior, we talk about that during the meeting to really think about which is kind of the best pathway for your student. And Helena has been really good too about really using that math 4 for students that choose that as a kind of a catch-all for to give students more foundation in that pre-calc and calc, but also to give them some statistics as well, and to really prepare them maybe for students that like math is not their favorite thing, but they're going to need to take math when they get to college. So we want them to have that additional year to build foundation. That's what that math 4 is really used for. And then with the advanced statistics, for those students that are definitely feeling like the humanities are my thing, statistics is really a class that is probably going to be their best pathway next. And for those that are choosing more in the STEM area, engineering, business as well, those are going to be my calculus students generally. And then depending on how quickly they pick up concepts, they may choose to do the calculus AB or the calculus BC. So, and some students that love math might say, I want to do both advanced stats and the calc. I mean, there are those that are out there. That would not have been me, but there are those that do exist. So maybe that's you. So that's going to give you a little bit of background with that math and to know that there's definitely, good conversation around that in terms of choice. So, all right, next slide.
Okay, excellent. 1 second. All right, so we're now at science. The science department chair, Meg West, some of you may or may not know her. She's a 7th grade and 8th grade science teacher. Looking at this inverted pyramid, we have our science course progression. So all students take conceptual physics in the freshman year, and then we go through chemistry, bio, and then there's a slew of courses that students can take concurrently as 11th graders if they are super motivated and strong academic standing, and it is something that Terri recommends, or they can take it as 12th grade. So all these classes up that 11, 12 are really upperclassmen classes. We have students who may come in at 10th grade or 11th grade who may have done a chemistry or biology course earlier, and that is something that we will kind of take into account in our placement and conversation with Terri to ensure that students are taking, the slew of physics, biology, and chemistry, and so they're properly prepared for those upper level science classes. On this list, which is a return to next year, and everything that we see on these slides is something that we are planning on having, and it is our course catalog is Introduction to Engineering class. This year and the previous years, we did not have this class. We saw a strong desire for it for students, and we've worked hard to bring it back to our course catalog. Next, please, Sarah. Thank you. History. These are history courses this year. You may also notice that, as with mathematics and with the science as well, we don't require this to be taken in 12th grade. However, they have to take 5 classes. Our course here, 9th grade history, is similar to English, where we want to have a standard freshman experience, and same with physics. And then once they get to 10th grade, world history, US history, and then American studies as the 12th grade. This year, we did have a single trimester elective class taught by Jean and Cal called History and Philosophy of Status and Power, which was a huge hit for the 11th and 12th graders who took it. We are in the process of using that model to develop a few more courses, and I'll talk about them at the end. But in terms of history, this is our flow. Mike Frankie, our American Studies teacher, is the department chair, and he would be a point of contact for questions regarding the subjects in general. Okay, the fine arts. So we split the arts into 2 just so they fit on the slide. But as when Terri speaks in a second, she'll be talking about the classes and how many you need for graduation requirements and eligibility for colleges. But these fine arts and performing arts, which are about to appear, are all under the same umbrella as the art requirement. We ask that students take at least 1 year. Often we'll find that students will take a number of years in these areas, because it becomes a passion, and/or it really is that thing that gets them excited about school. Nancy Yaki is our department chair. She currently is teaching our studio art class, and as you can see here, we do have this fairly standard progression of you take the 101 class and you move along towards the end, and the idea being a portfolio / videography as a high level course there. And we go to performing arts, and so performing arts, this graphically doesn't look great, but in terms of music classes, we have a lot of areas there, and in our dramatic arts, we are bringing back for this year a acting class which can fulfill the art requirement for a student, and that is a course that students can take multiple times, and it is accessible for students at all levels. That's why it's weirdly floating between 9th and 10th grade. Terri, any art type discussion?
I will talk about sort of requirements. Basically, a year is what's required, but obviously most students are going beyond 1 year because they tend to find some excitement in painting or ceramics or singing or whatever that they choose. The one thing I would say, if you have a student that is, involved in some sort of painting, drawing, something around those areas, that getting to that portfolio piece can be important, because students, when they're applying to college, they can put together a portfolio, whether or not they're going to be applying as an art major. They can submit some work as part of their application. So for students that do have that ability, I would say also for any vocal performance, musical performances, whatever, those things can be part of an application too. So if the student is enjoying this area, I just always encourage them to continue on. Excellent, thank you. That's why I wanted to give you the chance. All right, moving on. We're now in global languages, which is the way of saying our Spanish courses. Not on this slide, but if a student has taken previous years and has experience in other languages and/or is taking a language online, that can satisfy our language requirement at Dunn. We do require that students take 2 years of Spanish, and we also we require that students get to Spanish too.
We have, go through Spanish 4. This progression often looks different for students who may have had Spanish in middle school or similar, but where the asterisk is kind of as high as we have to have students go, whereas in less, and we want people to kind of take it 2 or 3 more years as well, just so they have a good foundation in the language. Alejandra Santos is the department chair. Next, please. Okay, now we're going to our next 2 departments are programs that fall outside of the core academic programs, but really have started to become their own program rather than simply being a elective classes standing on their own. So Joseph's Toolkit, the department chair is Chad Stacey. He has been in the role unofficially for the last 10 years, officially, for the last 6 months. Chad and Alex Westcott and Ezra Gates teach a class called the Toolkit, which is basically a introduction to entrepreneurship and business, and they run the Iwi Cafe. And then as we move up, there's other courses that exist throughout the program. I am going to say, and Terri, I'm going to speak, and then you're going to talk to the importance of this. Look at the 12th grade, we have a macro and microeconomics course that basically goes together as an economics course. This year, we had a partnership with Alan Hancock. We didn't raise the numbers to have an economics class run with students, and so we decided to turn inwards and run it in-house. Our economics class, it is an important class to have, in a college prep environment, but also, we have a strong demand from students, so that's why it's here. Terri, if you want to talk a little bit about, economics and
Sure.
and how
Sure.
that relates. Yeah.
Yeah, as Simon said, this is a wonderful foundation class for students that are pursuing anything around business or whatever for college, or just generally for students that like the humanities. Micro and macro can be really helpful. And, when you look at the Jurgensen's program, they're studying economics and entrepreneurship and things like that. So we thought we'd really infuse, the theoretical with the practical here, right? And so bringing in, what I love about it is that the students will be learning about, the stock market and things like that, and the economic structure, but then really being able to apply that, everything that they're learning. So I think it's going to be an exciting course, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun for students, and again, give them some nice foundation for the econ classes that they'll see in college.
And within our entrepreneurship program this year, and still kind of similar in the same umbrella, I guess, we had some innovation courses that were both co-created by students as well as by adults thinking, hey, this is an interesting course. We'll talk about that in a second, but the next slide is going to give away a big thing that Cal had shared today on his Coffee with Cal, and that is, you can press the button, our innovation program. So we have, next year we are launching an innovation program. This is a first round at a roadmap of what the program would look like. We have hired a gentleman named Eric Escalante, who has ran a similar program at a school called Cardigan Mountain in the East Coast. He has, if you look it up, it is a fantastic program. He is coming out here. He is joining Dunn School. He's going to be our inaugural director of the program. As you can see, a lot of it is to do with STEM-based, what we would call like a STEM makerspace / innovative thinking. This is going to be a place to hold a lot of the both innovation, teaching innovative skills to students, and we're talking about design thinking. We're talking about things where you're solving problems that are facing the kids, as well as a place for students and teachers to really ideate on innovative courses that really hit their interest, but also are able to hit those core learning goals. And so off to the right-hand side are some of those innovation courses we had this year as part of our program in terms of the NFT, which will be launching at our Dunn School Gala in a couple of weeks. The Sports Science and Media Lab, the Race Car Simulation and Sports Journalism, which will have components of English and math and science and photography and art and humanities in general. fuse without them, fuse within them. We really see this program as a place in conjunction with our entrepreneurship program, where we're really teaching by showing and getting the kids to do. We are seeing that the courses that we currently have, math, science, etc., are merely buckets, and we really want to see that people spreading across the disciplines. So exciting. We have some more exciting things to come that we aren't quite ready for prime time right now, but Terry's going to press the button and we're going to give you a take on what's happening. So we're still, as in the same process we had last year when we had students work with a gentleman named Will Brown. A couple of parents work with him also in the fall on co-creating courses that really are the courses that students need to be part of in order to really solve problems in the world in the future. And so a couple of these ones have already kind of bubbled to the surface. There are two of them, I'd say, in terms of marine biology and human studies that kind of already fit programs that exist elsewhere, but really bringing them to Dunn to have a wider experience for students, as well as looking at having a refugee literature program, as well as a course on peace and conflict in the 20th century, when you look at what's happening in the world and the challenges faced by a great amount of people, some of which who are on campus currently. Kind of really both from a sharing empathetic standpoint, but also understanding, the world and why it is the way it is in current context. I think it's very important current history courses to offer. Terry's going to talk through a timeline of where we're going to select courses, etc. The finalization of these will most definitely line up with the course selection for the majority of students, but similar to last year, we are working with students and teachers on creating these exciting courses, but not similar to last year. We're not going to do that over summer. We're going to have it set as we go into the third trimester. That was a lot of me speaking. Thank you, Terri, for helping me out and giving global pictures on that, but I'm going to hand it over to you. If people have questions as we're going through the rest of it, I didn't ask this earlier, but do feel free to share it in the chat, either directly with me or to the whole group, and we can have a Q&A at the end of the session. Terri.
All right, and I'm just seeing some people. Let me just let them into they just came in, so I want to make sure they're in. Can you see them, Simon, in the waiting room? Can't tell if I let them in or not. I think I did. Okay, so I just wanted to talk about some of these elective courses that Simon mentioned. These, and correct me if I'm wrong, Simon, these will be like the trimester electives that are going to be similar to that, the history and philosophy of power one. Is that correct? Oh, you're muted. We have Simon on mute.
I know, it's like, yes. So the idea being, these are conversations that we've either had with, so basically the TUMAS studies, a lot of that may come out of, in the past, as part of American studies, we've had a gentleman named Paul Gallis, who is an educator from the UC system and at Midland, in terms of coming in and talking about that within. And so it's really just expanding that to be, something that is a bit more in depth. And then also these other ones, looking like courses that would be a trimester style course. Marine biology, obviously there is experiential nature to that because, just that's the best way of learning marine biology. And so that may be, either during a winter period or a mini term where, we're basically just, figuring out exactly how to do that properly. So Terri, so these would be, trimester type courses.
Great, perfect. All right. And when we look at this next slide, so a lot of those courses are going to be down there in that electives category. So just to give you kind of an overview of what the graduation requirements are and sort of the recommendations as well, in terms of what we hope students will be taking. So there's, with some of those elective courses, those are wonderful because we're going to talk about the 5 core academic areas, and then those can be wonderful supplements for students that really like a particular area, whether it's something around STEM and they want to do something around engineering or Jurgensen's or the Chumash class, something like that. So there's definitely something for everybody. So this will show you just the graduation requirements of, for a student to graduate from Dunn, they have to have completed these particular things: 4 years of English. That's pretty much what's laid out here, right? So there's really not a lot of wiggle room with English. Everyone's taking it. You might have advanced, you might have regular. For students that really love writing, they may add that creative writing class in there too. They might pick up that sports journalism. So if they want to keep going in particular areas of interest, there are always other things they can add on. For math, 3 years, we recommend 4. And the students will tell you that's something that we talk with them about too, in that, it's important to think about building foundation for college and for life, to be honest. So understanding that 5 academic courses are required every year at Dunn. So that's going to far exceed those graduation requirements, probably because you have to take 5 academic courses every year. This is just the minimum of what we would require students to do. So what I would encourage all students to really think about is this last line here, and that is, to be best prepared for college, it is recommended that students take 5 academic courses each year in the 5 academic disciplines. So English, math, science, history, world language, and then art if they want, to pursue that area, other electives, things like that. Because I will tell you from, as a former director of admission, I'm going to rate curriculum. Like, I'm going to look at the curriculum that a student is presenting on their transcript, and usually it's at like a 1 out of 5, 5 being the strongest. And for the students that are graduating from Dunn, they have those 5 academic courses every year, and they've covered the discipline. So that's going to give them the highest rating when they're applying. So that's the biggest piece of the puzzle for me. Is there wiggle room in that? Of course, students have free will to do what they want. And sometimes students might say, well, I don't want to take this additional class in this area. I'd rather double up in science or something like that. So those are the conversations that we generally have in junior year as we're preparing for senior year curriculum. As I talked about earlier with math, we start to really think about humanities versus STEM sometimes, later in that junior year, to really start to guide students. And listen, it's not as though students have to know that yet either. I mean, they're young. They don't know for sure what they want to study yet. It's perfectly fine. In that case, typically they either are enjoying that pre-calc, or they're like, I think that's probably enough of that for me, in which case we head them over to statistics. But they do get pretty deep guidance on those things too. For science, I think it's, we're in that sort of physics first place. So with the physics, chem, bio foundation, and then really being able to explore any of those areas a little bit further. Sometimes students will double up in junior year. They're going to take their biology course, but they're like, but I also really liked chemistry, so I want to take that advanced chemistry course at the same time. Or I might want to take environmental science or anatomy and physiology. They don't have to do those things, but for students that love the sciences, that's something we do see them looking at. I will say too, for students that are interested in anything engineering, and I think, if as their parents, you probably already have seen that they're taking things apart and putting them back together, and they like all of that. And if that's the case, that engineering, we need to get them to those higher level physics classes. So that advanced physics is going to be important if they want to pursue engineering, as well as the calculus. Those are going to be kind of minimum requirements for some of the engineering programs that they may apply to. For history, I think we've got a lot of different options there, and some new ones that are coming online in terms of those trimester electives that I think students are going to find interest in as well. For world language, it's 2 years recommended. Most students are at least doing 3, and many are doing 4. Most of the juniors that I'm talking to right now are going to do the 4th year of Spanish as well. This is an area too, whether a student is a native English speaker or maybe has second language ability. the students are supplementing these things too. So we have Spanish at Dunn, but they may be taking a course. There's a number of really good online providers that students are also taking a class into. They're like, but I've always wanted to learn French, so I'm going to take that too. And especially our international students, they typically have more language ability. So they tend to explore a little further outside the curriculum in that way. And if not even taking a full class, they're just like, I really want to learn this, and they'll be on Duolingo or one of those other online platforms to continue to improve their language. And for students that say, oh, I kind of want to opt out of that 4th year of Spanish, I often will recommend that they do something online with a Duolingo or Babbel or one of those, just so they don't lose that ability, because when they get to that freshman year of college, most institutions, they're going to need to pick a world. I'm like, what world language are you signing up for? And they go, wait, I have to do that again. And, I want them to use that senior year to either hold on to that foundation or maybe try a new language that they really want to explore a little bit further. That's something we can also talk about. So, when it comes to art, there's so many wonderful things. And as I've said, I really like students to go as far as they want to with that, and to know that they can use, we have so many students that are doing wonderful work in whether performing arts or visual arts, and it can be a nice supplement in their application. And for electives, there's many to choose from. Most students are going to do at least one, most do several of those too. So, and I see we have a couple questions in the chat. Do you want to, is anything in here that we need to chat about?
Well, there's a couple there, Terry. I'm responding to Jen and David's to a couple of them via text, and I'll read them out later. But I do think Amy brings an interesting point here.
Yes.
Why is econ not considered the big 5 discipline? And then, and I think it's just basically where we've placed it, but you can speak to how it can also satisfy a history requirement.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. So the econ course that we're offering would also fulfill that social science or history requirement for the UC and for other schools too. Econ is considered something as part of the social sciences. So we're listing it under Jurgensen's, but it really would be, that's a great question. Thank you.
Yeah. And then the other question I think is worthwhile for the group is like, balancing the load academically from like, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th. Is that coming?
That's my next slide. Yes. So balance. Yeah. So I'm going to talk a little about advanced courses and just coursework in general, right? That balance is incredibly important. We need to have that strong foundation, but we can do that in different ways, right? So in certain areas, if a student may want to push into an advanced course in biology because they really love that, but maybe writing is really not their thing. We're going to do a regular English and maybe push more in the science area or math or whatever it is their thing is. It's the appropriate rigor for that student, and also in the context of the other things that are going on around them, right? So they have sports and clubs and different things. Some of them have jobs and are working, and that's also taking up time. So we just always want to be aware of those things. And as we kind of think about mapping this out, really helping students to, be careful in those areas. Listen, I feel like our teachers are lovely and they will give students some grace around these things, but we do not want to overload and have students, then it's, November and they're really drowning. So, that's the guidance that Simon and I will be meeting with the current 9th grade, current 10th grade, and 11th grade. I'll be doing their individual work with them, but it's part of the larger conversation for sure. And listen, my feeling is I think teachers can give us good feedback too, in terms of how fast a student is picking up concepts and things like that. So that's why they're also involved in, the recommendation toward any of these advanced courses. It's certainly the student interest, but the teacher recommendation, previous course grades, and all those things are used to determine the appropriate rigor for that particular student. So, but it is something that's important to us. And, I always feel like I want students to be challenged, but not overwhelmed. and to pursue the areas that they are just naturally curious about, the things that they want to learn more about. And I want to give them the opportunity to explore as they want to in those areas. And for students also, listen, there are those students that will say, but I also want to take this class over at John Hancock or over at Santa Barbara City College. And they do that, but those are things that, with me, with their advisor, with Simon, really talking about what that looks like and what the level of commitment is. We typically see that later on, obviously, summer between junior and senior year, things like that. But if you have a student that is interested in those things, please let me know, and we can certainly chat about some of the options that are out there. I just wanted to bring up too the AP exams. We are not an AP school. We don't have AP courses. We have advanced courses. That being said, we do provide students the opportunity to take AP exams on our campus. So they're not required for the advanced course or anything like that. And the teachers are clear that, they are not teaching to the AP curriculum. They're going to go through a lot of what's in there, but what's challenging about the AP curriculum is it doesn't give you a lot of time and space as a teacher to really dig into particular areas of interest that students may have. You kind of have a train that's coming in terms of an AP exam, and you don't have the ability to really explore beyond what that curriculum is. So for our teachers, they like having the opportunity to push into some different areas for students. But that also means that if the student does want to take the AP exam at the end of one of these advanced courses, it will require them to be doing studying on their own, and to, there are practice exams out there and things like that to help prepare them. But and teachers, listen, they're terrific about working with students on this, but I also want to protect their time and understand that this is these aren't AP courses, they are advanced courses, and to be clear about that. We have a number of students that will be taking AP exams this year, and they've done a good job of preparing themselves for those too. So, Simon, any comment on the AP piece?
No, I think you handled it pretty well. I mean,
okay.
In terms of the the preparation for exams, then also I think part of the reason that APs have gone away in a number of schools is also the time in terms of the exams being pushed where they are, and just the amount of time, school time to cover all that material, and really you're at inch deep rather than actually in depth.
And I feel like a question I get a lot is, well, how many advanced courses should a student take, right? And for some students, they are not interested in those. They want something completely different, and that's not their thing, right? For those that do want to, it's very much up to the student in their areas of interest. So I will see students, I said, doing more of that sort of doubling up in areas and things like that. Maybe not doing, they might do something around, I'm trying to think, especially in the sciences, they might do a regular bio, but an advanced chemistry, but to kind of balance it a little bit so they don't feel super overwhelmed. Yeah. Okay, I think that's.
And Terri, we do have a question from from Amy regarding stuff about AP that I think is worthwhile answering right now.
And I see another one here too. Okay, what is the latest value point?
Yep.
Oh, thank you, Amy. Yeah, so it's a big conversation right now, AP courses and college admission. The landscape right now is, I would say the majority of colleges are still remaining in that test optional space for SAT or ACT, of not requiring those for admission. But we do see that the AP exams can be a little bit of a push, right? So for students that are applying to some of those, more selective programs, those can help. The UCs, especially Berkeley, has been kind of vocal about saying, hey, if you have AP exams, even though the UCs are like, we do not use testing, those gone forever. They'll be like, but if you have those AP scores, we'll take a look. So, and it's not as though students have to do this, but you know, in the absence, especially I would say at the UCs, you know, there's no testing, there are no teacher recommendations, there's no counselor recommendations. All they have are the students writing and their transcript. I'm really not even a transcript. They have this, what the student has reported that they've taken and their grades. So any little bit of other information that they might be able to glean probably isn't going to hurt. And again, these are you know, really selective programs too. If you're talking about applying to Berkeley or LA, they're highly selective schools. I will say for business students that are able to provide some APs around maybe a calculus or something like that, or to be enrolled in AP calculus as a senior is going to be sometimes a bit of a benchmark that they kind of have to hit for some of the stronger business programs. For engineering loves to see calculus, they love to see physics. If you have some earlier APs in those areas, that doesn't hurt. For whatever reason, engineering is such a popular area of study, and what used to be what we would think would be maybe a likely or a target school for students are now reaches, because they just have so many applicants. Everybody wants to study engineering, so I say study the humanities, but that's my and then I saw a question too about the spring, about the the musical.
Yeah, I'm typing an answer in the chat. So
Okay, you got that.
They're basically, yeah, the fall and spring musical drama seasons, they satisfy the athletic requirement. However, they're not academic classes, so we do still require over the course of the 4 years the students take at least 1 year of a program.
Good. All right, just want to give you a sense of the process of when we're going into these conferences. The juniors have already been meeting with me since January with their parents or individually, however they want to do that. But we've already started talking about courses for next year, and then we'll be doing the input of their requests in March. And so we already have a pretty good idea for a lot of the students, and some of the students are still meeting with me, but that's the first thing we talk about is, let's talk about your classes for next year. You don't need to pick them right now, but what are you thinking about? So I'll be going through them through those courses with them in March this month to kind of map out exactly what their requests are. Same thing goes freshmen and sophomores. We're meeting with them March 27th through April 7th during seminar. Simon and I will meet with them, and we kind of have our like a little chart, and like, you know, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade, like here's what I'm doing, and creating kind of a nice 4-year plan so they see kind of the progression of these different classes, and then they'll have the opportunity to share that with you. And then again, these are things we can make adjustments to as you have conversation with your student. And then you'll receive a recommended course list for next year in April. And then those courses will be finalized at the end of trimester 3. So we just want to make sure you have the information and to see the sequence, so you can help to have that conversation with your student as well. And questions? What else? We have anything else here in the chat? Are we good? I think chat is good.
Beth, I see your hand.
Oh, good.
Yeah, hi, it's kind of a long one to put in the chat. So my question is, so for the advanced English, is that primarily decided upon if the student will go into advanced based on their writing skills, or are other things considered? Like when you're going over the classes for next year, are you looking at the syllabus for the advanced English versus the regular English, and looking at the items that will be read and discussed and so on and so forth? Because that's a big thing, is, you know, is a student interested and motivated to read about these topics versus these topics? And then so that's kind of one question. And then the other question is the advanced English focused more on the volume of writing, or is it also just a grade breakdown into class discussion and, PowerPoints? Or basically, my son's not a great writer, but he can really enjoys reading and stories and things like that, and he's a good discussion. So
Yeah.
you understand my question?
Yes. Good questions. I would say that the combination of the ability to discuss and talk through text in great detail. I think the ability to critically analyze themes, etc., within text. I would say the writing is taken into account. I would also say that part of the process is, when you said interest in terms of the texts that are studied in one to the other, when we talk about student interest in terms of coming into it, we're talking specifically about their interest in a topic, not necessarily whether or not the books that are going to be read next year are the primary the primary motivator. I would also say that from Miss Spencer to Mr. Watson, over the years they've formed quite a good relationship of knowing what students will be successful in an advanced course at 10th grade based on their experience within the 9th grade. And so we definitely trust that judgment as well as their performance in the 9th grade. In terms of the reading versus writing, I think that's probably a discussion that we can have directly about your child, and in terms of including the English department in that as well. But does that answer your questions?
Yeah. So, but does the books that are read, does that change from year to year for the different classes, or?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Feel free to raise a hand if you have a question. I can see some discussion in the chat, but that just appears to be good job, Terry.
Hey, but I have that too. I was just thinking I could share that link. It's in that college updates thing that we send out. That's usually in the weekly, I think. But let me see if I can find it. It's if I can pull it up quickly, and I'll share it here in the chat. It's just you listen. It talks about the curriculum and different things, but the one thing I think that is, I don't know. It's important to know from the college side that, when people say, oh, I met the A through G requirements, you're going to hear that. For those of you that are in California or have kids here, going to school in California, A through G, it's a University of California, their core academic requirements. Okay. They say the A requirement is whatever, English, B is math, C is history, whatever. So they have their A through G requirements. And, for our students at Dunn, they're exceeding those A through G requirements. I mean, that's not uncommon because we require them to take 5 academic courses every year. But from the college side too, we would say, well, the student met the minimum requirements for admission. I mean, there are other students that are going to do more than that. And so I always want to think about, are we preparing our students for the freshman year of college, right? And I don't really bother with, well, what the A through G are. I'm like, we're going beyond that because I want them to be in that freshman year of college going, I'm good. Like I have what I need to be successful here. So that's what you'll see in Terry's college advice. I'll share the link here.
And I raised my hand there, Terry, just to add a point in there as well. Part of the A through G requirements is a passing grade is a 70 or above for those courses that need to fulfill the A through G. And the part of our passing grade is a C and a C minus. And so that, and plus having the courses, having 5 a year, and that just means that the kids, as they're graduating high school, they're both ready for life and ready for college, but definitely ready for the UC/Cal State systems.
Yeah, and the remediation piece is also something we want to talk about, right? There are some students that have a difficult trimester and need to do some remediation. And there are many different online programs and things like that, or they may be able to repeat it at Dunn the coming year or something like that. So, those things happen. And, we're here to help provide some guidance when that does happen, to make sure that the student is being set up for success and continuing on in their academic journey in a good way. Yeah.
Correct. All right, well, it looks like we still have an hour and 36 minutes on our 2.5 hour timer.
Go, Simon.
I'm joking. We're pretty much ready to wrap up. So we will record this. We will play it back for both, I guess, so you can actually hear, so the recorder can hear Terri and I, and we will also share the slideshow, I believe, just so you can kind of have that information in front of you. And thank you all for coming.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Bye, guys.